Hey guys, KK, and thank you for joining me on another video on this channel. In this video we're going to finish off from the last video on our master landscape layer tutorial set, if you like. In the previous video we created the logic for our master layer, which is here. And in today's video we are going to finish off this master layer so it is ready to be duplicated as many times as we need to fill our masks on our landscape. Before we get started with this, I'm going to showcase a few changes I've made to the logic side of things in our master layer, if you like. It's quite simple changes. After vigorous testing off camera, I have made some changes. I will go through them now. The first one we're going to look at is our sample blend. This is the master one, so any changes we make here will be made throughout all our layers in our landscape material. So what we need to do is browse to this. So to browse to this, you could just simply click on it and just click browse at the top and it'll open it up here in the content drawer. If we double click that and open this logic up, double click that and open the logic up. Oh no, that's our master logic, that's why. That's the wrong one. I want the functions. That's a bit strange. Anyway, what you can simply do as well is just double click on the actual function itself. Okay, in here you'll notice very little has changed. The only change I've made is these two, the near and the far tiling, were set as scalar parameters. I've since changed them to a vector 2, and you'll notice that the near is on top and the far is on the bottom. All I've done there is swapped them round, put the far at the top and the near at the bottom, and just simply dragged it off the pin. If you're not sure about that and yours is still like this, all you have to simply do is come from your near function and just drag it into where your far goes in and just replace that pin, and do the same for the bottom, and you'll end up with a cross where the noodles are crossing like this, and then all you have to do is just simply swap them over like that and make sure they're set to vector 2s. Then just hit apply and save, and that's that done. It may have to compile shaders, well it is for me now. And once that is done, we are going to come to our master UVs. We're going to open this up. You'll see a few things have changed in here as well. Prior to this, if I remember correctly, append vector, you'll have an append vector here for both of them, where this input goes into both append vectors, and these two are set to scalar parameters, and they both go into the append, and the append goes into the 1 minus. The change I've made, I've simply removed the append vectors and changed these scalar parameters to a vector 2 like we just done in the previous function, and then you just simply hit apply and save, and that's the changes I've made to the UVs. There's another change I want to make, and that's to do with our layer color tint. Instead of just using a multiply, because it really does mess up our colors when tinting our landscape, we're just going to simply change from a multiply. So if we delete our multiply, right click and just type blend space color. Yeah, and we want the blend color burn. This will give much nicer results with our color tinting. I don't know why I didn't do this in the first video, but I just thought about it after I ended the first tutorial and actually uploaded it to YouTube. And they're the only changes I want to make to the logic. Everything else is fine, just some simple changes. We're going to hit apply on our master logic and save, like so. And then we will end up back here where we just have the logic and it's all changed. And what I want to showcase now is simply how to populate this and set the defaults for our parameters and other various things that I want you guys as artists to take into account when setting up a master layer, like so. So to start, we're just going to get a layer albedo texture parameter, if you like. A lot of people will go right click, texture, object. You can also right click, texture, object, where are you? Object parameter, where you could set the name in here, which is fine. Them ways are fine. You can also right click the texture object and promote to parameter, and then these two are the same. But we're not going to do that. I'm going to showcase an easy way. If you remember when we set up the logic in the last video, we put in these function names. We put layer brightness, layer color tint, like layer normal amount, and all this good stuff. The reason we did that is because it's all here now, and what we could simply do with this function is just right click on the in pin where it's layer albedo texture. We just right click and promote to parameter, and you get the same thing. I'm going to hit right arrow on my keyboard, and then I'm just going to delete the initials in the brackets, like so. Just hit enter. We'll drag this off up here. I'm going to do it with this as well. Just hit the arrow, get rid of that, and we've got our parameter there ready to go. And we're going to promote this to parameter as well, like so. And as it stands, we've now got our texture parameters ready. I'm going to comment these and just put textures, like so. I'm going to increase the font size to 25 and just change the random color to whatever. And there we go, we have our texture sample set up. What we need to do now is do the same for the rest of them. So we just simply right click, promote to parameter, right arrow, and get rid of the initials in the brackets, and just press enter, and we get our parameter here. I'm going to speed the video up now while I do the rest of them, and I will be back once I've completed this. That. Okay, so now we've done that, we have basically set up our parameters for our master, and as it stands, we can just simply apply this and save it, and we're all set up with our parameters now. What I want to do is just to set up the defaults. As you can see, we already have the name. What we're going to do is simply set up the default groups. So if you click on your parameter, and in the left here on the details panel, we have a group. It's under material expressions. We have a group here. We could simply give this, say, layer dash textures. Right, we'll just leave it at texture, and then we're going to highlight all three of them. Change the group to layer texture, and I'm going to highlight the first one, give it a set priority of 1, the normal is going to be a set priority of 2, and the ORD is going to be a set priority of 3. And then we move to the options after that. We just simply click on it and do layer, oh wait, I spelled that wrong. Options, like so. And then we could just simply highlight them all and change the group to layer options. And then we could set the priority. So I want the color tint right at the top. So I'm going to set the priority of 1. And then the brightness will be 2. The saturation can be 3. The contrast can be 4. And the AO can be 5. And the normal amount can be 6. Roughness minimum can be 7, and the maximum can be 8. Okay, so that's them set up now. and the UVs are next. So we're going to go on to our UVs. We're going to go to the group again, layer dash UVs. Right, so I'm going to set these as well. So the near is 1 priority, far is 2, and you get the gist now, 3 and 4. And what we need to do now, as you can see, we need to set the group for all of these. So let's just highlight them all, just set them to layer UVs. Hit apply, and as it stands now, our master layer is almost set up. We've set the group up, we've simply got the names set up, and what we need to do now is get the defaults. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to come to our master material, which is here. Double click our master material, and you see this is where we was left off before. So what I'm going to change first is my slope main. If I come to the 3D viewport, you can see our slope main is these mountains here. It looks a little different from normal because I've made some changes since the actual last video to showcase better what we're doing. So now we've done that, I'm going to click browse here and come to our master. You'll notice here I've got a master here and a master logic, and this is called master tut. That is because prior to this second installment of this video, I have actually set all this up ready to go. If I come to my layers, I have ls layers, and this has all the layers in that we're using on this series already set up. These are the final products after we've done this. So I've had to change the name so it doesn't confuse all these what's going on. I hope that is alright with you guys, but I just didn't want to have a tutorial that's dead long with setting all these up. We can just swap them over into the master material. These are our basic layers from a couple of videos ago. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come to this master, I'm going to duplicate this, I'm going to keep the tut side of it, and I'm just going to call this main slope for argument's sake in this video. Right, so I've got main slope. I'm just going to drag this in here, and this is our master function in here now. All I've done is change the name. I've come to the master function, duplicated it like so, and just changed the name inside there. Just going to delete that. And now we have our main slope. In here is our basic, as you already know, guys. What I want to do is open this main slope, and the first thing that we need to do before we connect it up is set these defaults. So this is our main slope. For every time you duplicate your master layer, you do need to come inside and change all the names. And I'm going to showcase that with this layer alone, and then we can go into the material instance and set up our defaults. First things first, I do need some textures. For this, I know I'm going to use this layered rock cliff. To change this now, you just simply click on the albedo texture parameter like so. Open your content drawer and drag the albedo into it. Hit the normal again and do the same there. And hit the ORD and put that ORD into there as well. Now we have our default textures set up on our main slope function. Hit apply and save. And what I want to do now is just to simply put this function into our landscape material, which is here. So I'm just going to hold left control and click and drag them pins into the material there like so. At this stage I can just delete that basic one and put this in its place. So I'm going to hit apply on our landscape material, and you will notice now all our main slope has turned black. That's normal, so don't worry about that. We're going to come back into our main slope function, and we're going to change the name. So I'm going to click on the albedo texture. I'm going to you'll see the word layer. Double click on the layer word and just type, what is it? Main slope, main dash slope. Right, so, and I'm going to highlight that main slope left control and C to copy it. And then what I can quickly do now is come through all our parameters, control and V, double clicking on the layer word, control and V, it will change. And then once you've done that, just click on your albedo again, and where it's layer in the group, layer textures, just double click the layer, control and V, and you've changed that name. Now highlight all 3 texture parameters, click the drop down menu thing and just choose main slope textures. What we can do, we need to do that for all of these options and the UVs, so I will speed the video up and sort that out real quick. Okay, so now I have changed the name of all these. They're all set up now with main slope. What you can do, and this is how I generally do it with my workflow, is I initialize my groups. And what I mean by that is give them a numerical order, if you like. So by that, now I've set up the group. I'm just going to come to the group thing here and make sure I'm at the far left of the name. I just type 0.0 with a dash, and then we can just simply highlight all the groups and just swap them from the normal ones to there. Can highlight all these. This is an easier way to do it. If you highlight them all, you'll see you've got main slope options. Just click there, the start of main, and just type 0.1 with a dash, like so, and then we'll do all the UVs as well, and this will be 0.2 with a dash, like so. Okay, so that is the group setup. I'm going to hit apply and save. We'll come to our landscape. Right, so my shaders are compiling, that's why it looks a little jittery. We'll click the landscape and open the material instance. And you'll notice now the newly created function we've made. Right, so, and now I've got my main slope textures, my main slope options, and my main slope UVs. As you can see, I've got the 0, 0, 0, 1 and 0, 2, and that is basically just setting up in order that I want it. You can see the jitter in there, it's still, oh there you go, the shaders are compiled. What I want to do now is come in here. Now we've got our first layer set up. First thing I'm going to do is highlight them all. I think the textures will be fine as they are. Highlight all the parameters, so there we go. We'll change the color tint to pure white. Press OK. The brightness, I'm going to set that to 1. It's very bright. 0.2, 3, 1, 0, 0.2. That'll do. The saturation, we can just put 0.1 for now. The contrast, we'll put a 1. Oh, 0.5. There you go. And the AO we'll just set to a 1. The normal amount we'll set to 0.5. The roughness minimum we'll set to 0.5, and the maximum we'll set to 1. Slope near. What I'm going to do first, before we do the UV side of things, I do know the parameters I need for these, so maybe follow with suit if you like. So for our distant length, we're just going to hit our distant length and just put 25,123, so 25,000, and we're just going to give a transition size of 150, like so. Okay, so we sort our UVs out now. Just put a 1 in both of them for now, and you shall see it does look blotchy. I'm not sure whether I need to go larger. This is our near. So I do need to go larger. Like so. So I'm looking at about 35. And that is that setup. So if the near is 35, you will expect the far to be 50. 60. Yeah, about 60. Okay. What I want to do now is just test a few things. I'm going to increase our near to 45. No, 25. 35. 38. 40. Yeah, 40 will do. Yeah, like that. Happy with that at the minute. Okay, so as you can see now, our main slope is there. It does look kind of alright actually. Quite impressed there actually with that. It does look quite decent. If you watch on the rocks down here on this mountainside, you'll see when I move the camera backwards, you'll see the transition from near to far tiling. If you keep watching them rocks, there you go. There's the transition. You can increase and decrease that length. So if I set this to 2500, that's 2500, you'll notice it is really close there. And the transition size, if we set that to 1500, you get more of a sharp blend. If you set it to 1, it's more of a wider blend. Can you see? You'll just see if you watch the transition there. Let's slow the camera down. You may just see the transition. I think it might have passed. Just keep going in like this. It's really hard to see the actual transition. Let's set the distance length back to, let's say to 15,000 while we test this. If you just keep watching the mountains here in general, you'll see the transition happen. It's a lot harder to see. I mean, if I increase this to 50, you can see the transition there now. The more you reduce this, which I'm finding a bit weird, the more of a blend you get. So if I put a 5 here like this, you'll see the transition is happening, but it's a lot more smoother. To combat that, you've noticed that it needs a lower number for a bigger transition and a higher number for the sharpness. Like if I put this to 100, it's just more or less a straight line while it transitions, like so. So now we've debugged our transition stage, we can come back into our slope main, come to our master, and we'll just find our transition stuff, which is here, distance length and transition, and we'll come here. And if you just simply come to your distant mask and just simply add a 1-. If you watched the last video, you'll know that a 1- is my favourite node in the world. It's a joke, it's not. The lerp is my favourite. Just hit apply when you put that 1- in between the input and the divide. Let's save. And these changes that have been made there, these will affect the master, in which the master will affect all preceding layers. Okay, now the compilers have finished compiling shaders, sorry. We're going to close all this down, and now you can see it's a sharp line still. If I set that back to default, very sharp line. Increase it, you can hardly see the transition now. But the higher I go with the transition phase, there you go. Let's set this to 25. And there you go, you're getting a nice transition there now. Lower that a bit more. It's more of a nice transition there on the mountains. Yeah, okay. So I'm happy with that now. We'll set this to 9 as a default. Okay, so what we need to do now is set up our master with these defaults. And the simplest way to do that, you can leave the textures like that. When you duplicate the master, you then apply your textures you want to use on that layer. So first off, the color tint. We know we're going to need to set this to a white, so we'll just simply drag this to a white and hit OK. What's next? Our brightness is set to 0.2, so we're going to hit a default of 0.2. And now that's at a 0.2. We're going to hit tab on the keyboard to go to the next one. And what I like to do with parameters that are this low, I like to set a minimum slider, and what a minimum slider does is it stops you going negative. If you don't set a minimum or a maximum, the artist has the ability to go minus infinite numbers and exceeding maximum numbers if you like. So what I like to do is put a 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros and then hit 1 and hit enter. And that now is an absolute minimum of before it hits a negative number. So what I've done, I've highlighted, as you can see, it's gone to negative numbers. Just going to click, press Ctrl and B. I'm going to highlight this now, just clicking on it, left Ctrl and C, copy it, and then in the maximum, you can give the artist a maximum value they can set this to. So I'm going to put 3, like so. The contrast, where are we up to? Brightness, saturation. We've set saturation at 0.1. So we're going to set this to 0.1, hit Tab, Ctrl and V, and give this saturation a maximum of 5. The maximum is completely up to you. I'm just going off experience, setting these maximums. What's after saturation? Contrast. Our contrast default is 0.5, so we're going to put 0.5, hit Tab, Ctrl and V, and the maximum for our contrast I'm going to set to a 1.7, like so. AO amount is 1, we're going to set this default to 1, the minimum can be blah blah blah, and the maximum can be a 2. Okay, so what's after AO? Normal amount. The normal, we're going to set this to a 0.5 as well, a minimum of our default, and the maximum of 2 for normal. You don't want to over normalize your texture, trust me. A minimum of the roughness is 0.5, a minimum can be that, and a maximum can be 1. And the roughness maximum, you could do exactly the same, but for the maximum, I am going to give this a 1. That's the minimum, and the maximum is a 1. Okay, so here comes the good side of things, is our UVs near. What was our UVs near? 40. So I'm going to set the default to 40. The minimum, I'm going to change the minimum to just a 1. And then a maximum of 100. So, our maximum UVs, our far UVs, my apologies, is 60. So we're going to hit 60 on the default, a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 200 for the far. Distance length, at the minute it's set to 15,000, but I am going to set a default of 25,123,000. The minimum can be 100 and the maximum can be 60,123. So actually we'll change the maximum to 100,000. Press enter. The distance transition, we're going to set this to a 9 as a default. It's going to be 1 as a minimum, and it is going to be 200 as a maximum. No, you don't need 200. Probably 60 will do it for the transition. And what we do now, we set up our master. We simply hit apply and save. And now our master is ready. So if we come to our folder, build worlds, landscape, layers, master, layer master, masters, and here at the minute is our masters function. As you can see, I've got mine here. It's exactly the same thing. All the defaults are set up the same. So yeah, it's the same thing. What I can do now, let's have a look. What I've done here, I've done this prior to finishing off the master actually. So we've got our master here and our main slope. If I double click on main slope, we're already in there. If I click on these, you'll notice that there's no defaults, and that's because we made this layer before we set our master. And I've done that on purpose to showcase that there's no default set up here. All I'd have to do is copy the name, Control and Z, I've got the name copied, and then come to our master here like so. All you have to do here, let me just get rid of this main slope. Come to my main slope, delete that actual layer, and it should clear this off, but it's not doing right now. But never mind, not to worry. And you simply click your master tut or master function, mine's there, and you simply left control and D. You've duplicated that master now, and then we can get rid of that and just put main slope like so. If we double click on this, now our main slope has all the defaults set up and ready to rock. All you'd have to do is, like what we did earlier in the video, is come in and change the names. That is it. Like so. Change the names of each of them, change the group names, put them in the order that you want, and so on and so on. Go through like we did earlier in this tutorial and change all the names, all the group names. And once that is, I'm not going to save this because I don't need this. So now, let's click our main slope. I'm going to click the master tut, and I'm going to delete them. Force delete. And the reason I've done that is because I'm going to open my landscape material. Like so. Open this up. You'll see I'm getting an error because this function's not working anymore. And what I'm going to do is come to my layers folder. And I've got my LS layers set up. And you can see now I have got my slope main, which goes there. And I can just simply plop that into there, put that into there. That's my slope main. If I open this myself, you'll see that I have changed the textures already. I've changed the name to slope main, and I've initialized them with the 00 slope main on the group. And I've done this, and I've already got all my defaults. And what I've done here, I've gone through every layer that I need. So if I come in here and get my slope base, drag that in, you'll notice that's my slope base basic there. And what I've done, I've simply gone on the wrong screen. I've simply left control and drag that in, duplicated my master, what I created in the last tutorial. Open that up, you'll see it looks exactly the same, the defaults are the same. I've still got all the same colours, and you'll notice the textures are slightly different, and I've initialized these to 0.3, and then these are 0.4, and so on and so on, and all ascending. So what I'm going to do now is I'm simply going to drag my layers in here and see what actual mess I've made in the landscape. So I won't be a second, I'm going to change it for height flow. Okay, now I have just applied this. I've applied all the previous layers that I've made. The master function that we've just finished off creating, you can just duplicate that. You would need to go through, like if I come to my last one, and you just change the name like we did earlier, and you'll see I'm up to 1.5 on the group, and I'll showcase the reason for this shortly. And now I've done that, my landscape will look a little bit different, probably worse than what we started, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. Okay, I'm going to hit apply and save. Come to landscape. Oh, there you go. Shoddy. And then I'm going to open the material instance like so. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to separate this away. And what I've done now, I've put my material instance at the side here so it can be seen. I'll come back to our landscape. You can see that this is a mess because I've not played with the numbers yet. But I've basically duplicated our master layer and changed all the names, and you can see here I've got 0.00102, so on and so on, all the way down, and now they're all in order. And right at the bottom I have my landscape blending and my slope detection. Okay, so that's that set up. Now, as it stands, that's the finish of it. You've set your master layer up. You've duplicated that master layer so many times, in which you need for your landscape layer, or your landscape material, and applied them in there and changed them for that standard base layer. And now you have all these changes that you can make for each layer. So all you have to do, what I'd recommend, is just coming through each layer. You spend an hour or so just changing all your parameters. There is one thing I'm quickly going to do. Might not have happened. Let me come to my build world, landscape, layers. I just want to check this out. It's my layer master, functions, and I'm going to come to my master UVs. Yes, you can see the change we made earlier has actually applied to my actual function for my actual layers. I'm not going to save it, I don't need to. But like I say, it's now up to you. If I increase this roughness min, you'll notice all that shininess will go away on the mountains. And then the normal amount I'll increase a little bit. Set this to 1, 2, 3. You can see that normal increasing looks terrible. I'm going to set this to 0.7. There you go. Right, so the saturation, if we increase the saturation to 2, you'll see that you're getting a little bit of a colour tint from the saturation. If I decrease this back to default, you'll see the saturation goes. But you give the artist the opportunity to absolutely saturate the hell out of their landscape. You've also got AO amount. I never really use AO that much, I'll just keep that at defaults. The contrast, you can change the contrast, as you can see there. Using the contrast is a good way to identify what layer is what mask. So like if I come to my slope base, just highlight the contrast, just do this. You can't actually see this because it's, I think it is the same texture. No, the different textures. Let's do slope brightness. You can't actually see it. I think that's to do with the blending. Let's come down here. I think it's this white area here. Never mind. But if I say I come to my height flow mask, increase the brightness and contrast. Let's have a look where this is. So I increase the contrast. There you go. That's your height flow. These textures I've got in here are just some arbitrary textures that I already had ready. After you've set up your landscape material like this, you could simply go to Quixel Bridge and import the actual textures that you want to use. Let's increase that brightness. There you go, you can see the brightness of that flow map coming through. Height flow. Then you have the flow map. Let's increase the contrast. There you go, that's the flow map coming through. It's quite nice to increase that contrast a little bit and the brightness, like so. And then we can come to our ground, second contrast, increase that, and there you go, that's your second ground. A nice green tint on there, let's brighten that up a little bit. And you could just basically tell the difference now between them. If I come to my ground primary, increase that contrast and brightness. There you go, look at that. Zero contrast, completely white. The good thing about this, you can see where the blends are as well. If I do this, come right to the bottom to my blend, that was my ground main. I've got it set to ground primary at the minute, there's just something I could change. Increase this blend. So if I set 0.1, 1, 2, 3, it's getting sharper there. 5, 100. Yeah. The ground second, increase that. You see that blend happening there now. nice little blend going on. Okay, I'm getting carried away. So it's up to you now to duplicate as many layers as you want. For what you need, just go into your duplicated layer and change the names of your functions, parameters, your parameters and your groups, and you'll end up with a material instance that has all the layers you need, all in order and successful. And then after you've done that, just go in there, play with the parameters, find out what looks best for you, and then change your textures. To change your textures, just simply highlight these, and then you will just say, come into your Megascans folder, surfaces, and just choose some arbitrary one like this forest floor. I'm going to highlight these to check all they've already changed, and just simply come in and drag these in like so. And there, scroll down and get the ORD in there as well. And this will change. Using the slope based is probably not a good thing. What should we use? We'll use this height flow for this texture, so we highlight these parameters here, come in here, get these, let's scroll down a bit. So if I change this albedo now, the normal map, and the ORD. Now if I change the contrast, there they are. Reduce that brightness, let's increase that brightness. It may be a bit jittery as well, that's just in the background your shader's compiling. As you can see now, I've actually got these set up. So I've increased the contrast slightly, like so, and then maybe the roughness, like so. Get rid of all that shiny effect. But yeah, that's it. So change your textures. I'm going to set them back to default, so I don't actually want that. You can always come in here and change your defaults. And just change your textures, play around with your parameters that we've made over this. There you go. The shaders have compiled now, back to smoothness. Like I say, yeah, just come in, change your textures, change the parameters, and try your best to get it looking as nice as you want. Obviously this doesn't look very nice, but off camera, in between this tutorial and the next one, I will try my best to rectify this and make it look at least a little bit more daunting, at least a little bit more better. And in the next tutorial we will set up some switches in which we can enable and disable each of these layers if and when needed. Okay, so I hope you found this tutorial useful. If you did, then like the video and subscribe and share it with your friends. I have got loads of plans for this channel in the future, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.